This is ODAT Chat, your instant connection to recovery and community, one day at a time. This podcast may contain strong language, sexual content, and spiritual truth. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to ODAT Chat. My name is Arlena, and I'll be your host. In case you didn't know, ODAT stands for One Day at a Time. If you haven't had a chance yet, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes. And if you enjoy the podcast, I hope you share it. You might be wondering about the purpose of the podcast, and what I can tell you is that besides really wanting to clear up a lot of misconceptions about addiction and recovery in general, I also wanted to share the teachers, ideas, and exercises that have helped me on my own journey over the last 22 years that really fall outside the parameters of a 12-step group. And in this episode, I'd like to share a book recommendation. So this one's called A Course in Miracles. I learned about this early on through lectures by Marianne Williamson. Her lectures kept me sober my first year in recovery. It was just something easy that I could listen to over and over again. I was really just trying to feed my brain some positive information because really it needed some brainwashing. So Marianne Williamson has lots of books on, well, she had books on tape, CD, I guess, now, but she lectures on A Course in Miracles, and I really wasn't sure how to explain it, so I went to their website at acim.org, acourseinmiracles.org, and this is the definition they give. So, A Course in Miracles is a complete self-study spiritual thought system. As a 3-volume curriculum consisting of a text, workbook for students, and manual for teachers, it teaches that the way to universal love and peace, or remembering God, is by undoing guilt through forgiving others. So what I can tell you is that my experience with this, they have a workbook, and I did the workbook, and the lessons in it are kind of far out there, but whatever, just give it a shot. You know, we don't want to have contempt prior to investigation, right? So the lessons are sort of a different way of looking at the world. So it really starts to expand your mind. It was actually kind of a trippy experience. I highly recommend it. The benefits I've received from it have lasted. I probably started reading it my first year of sobriety, and 22 years later. I'm not saying that's the only reason I stayed sober, but it certainly helped, right? And Dan is actually my guest on the episode today, and he's a very studious practitioner of A Course in Miracles as well. So Dan actually happens to be my husband's very first sponsor, and he is coming up, I think by the time this is published, he'll have 30 years, which is amazing. And it's a long episode, so I'll just tell you ahead of time, if you need to listen to it in 2 parts, then do that. Or maybe you can listen to it all at once. I find Dan to be very intelligent, very thoughtful, and, he's usually really funny, but we're pretty serious on this conversation. We get into some good deep stuff. So I hope you hang in there for the whole thing or listen to it in parts, but I think you'll really get a lot out of it. I know I did. I love Dan, so I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So with that, please enjoy this episode with Dan. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so I have known you for a very long time. You are my husband's sponsor and have been for how long now?
More than 25 years.
That's a very long time. And I met you when I first got sober. You're a really funny guy. You have great stories and also great wisdom. So I thought we would talk about a few different things. We discussed moving in sobriety. You moved how many years ago was it now?
About 15 years ago.
Okay,
yeah.
So you moved 15 years ago and you're established now?
Yeah, 14.
Yeah.
Thinking about it, maybe about 14 years ago.
Okay, that's a very long time.
Yeah.
And so we were going to talk a little bit about maybe the hazards of long-term sobriety, which, you had mentioned you don't hear spoken about very often, and once you mentioned it, neither have I, so that'll be really interesting. And then maybe we'll talk about your current situation with your kids and how addiction has affected their life too. So we'll hit all those things and see how it goes. But first, some warm-up questions. So what do you do professionally?
I am a commercial lighting contractor.
Okay, and you've been doing that for how long?
Since 1992.
Okay.
So
Long time.
Long time.
Yeah. And what is your relationship status?
I'm married.
You're married. How long
And
have you been
actually
married?
happily married.
Okay.
March 15th will be 6 years.
Okay. Very good. Wow. Time flies.
It does.
Very cool. Okay. And tell me a little bit about like where you grew up. You grew up in San Jose?
I did. I
Okay.
actually grew up in East San Jose.
You went to high school?
Well,
Oh,
I was supposed to.
you were registered for high school in San Jose?
Yeah.
Is that when...
I grew up. I don't know how much influence these things that happened in my life really had on the course of my life. I sometimes wonder. I think one of the things that impacted my personality is that when I was in the third grade, I was tested and a decision was made that I was a gifted kid. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't ask my opinion. They just put me in this different gifted kid class. And the problem for me was that in the school district that I was in, I had to change schools every year because the gifted program for third graders was at this school and fourth graders was another and fifth grade was yet another. And so I was kind of denied that. I didn't really build those relationships. It made me feel different. Mm. And other people treated me differently. I didn't think that I was better than anyone. I didn't really want to be in that class. But other people, not all, but some people assumed that I thought I was better than they were. Or, I don't know. It was difficult for me, though.
Changing schools every year?
School was difficult for me. But that's the thing. I don't know, had I just stayed at the same school all the way through, if it would have been less difficult or more. Who knows?
What was it about school that was difficult for you?
Well, I think a lot of it was feeling different, having people treating me differently, and having to reform relationships every time, and getting to a point where I didn't even really want to form close relationships with people because I wasn't going to be there next year. Mm-hmm.
And since the gifted program was moved from school to school, it wasn't the same kids being shuffled around?
Some, yes, yeah. Some probably, I don't know, 75 or 80%. You know, there were probably half of them from start to finish. When you change, some would stay and others wouldn't, and sometimes new ones would come into the class. But, you know, we were all kind of like that misfit. It's cool to be a nerd now. It wasn't cool then.
Right.
I didn't want to be a nerd.
No, it's kind of funny. I have teenage kids, and the peer pressure nowadays is very different than when I was growing up. When I was growing up, the peer pressure was to do drugs and have sex, all that stuff. And now the kids are under a lot of pressure to do really well in school. They're all struggling to get A's and B's, and if you can't do that, then, that's when you're different.
I guess stress is stress,
Right.
So, and then my personality.
Which is?
I don't know, difficult. Difficult.
Problem with authority, perhaps?
I remember...
Talks too much in class?
I think, well, yeah, right? Mm-hmm. I think if I were in school now, I think I probably would be diagnosed as ADHD. Mm-hmm. I remember several years ago, how moms, they save everything.
Yeah.
And so I was going through a bunch of old pictures and just schoolwork and stuff.
Report cards. And
all that stuff, right? Yeah. And there was one from kindergarten where the teacher had written a note home to my mom and said, Daniel is an excellent, very bright, if he would only keep his hands to himself and sit still.
Hands to himself.
Yeah. So...
Who are you touching?
Who's next to me?
Whoever was next to you.
Yeah. I had a real hard time sitting still.
Yeah. I think I probably would have been in that same boat.
Yeah.
All my report cards are like, just talks too much in class. And here we are in a podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older brother who passed away several years ago.
Okay.
And I have a younger sister.
Okay. What happened to your brother?
He actually was born with a congenital defect that a certain number of people have that almost always goes undetected until it kills you.
Oh, wow.
And it's called AVM.
Atrial valve?
No, it's an abnormal venous mass. It was like deep in his brain.
An aneurysm?
It's like a tangle of blood vessels.
Right, yeah.
And they tend to be weak and, Right. So and he had an aneurysm and it killed him.
Wow. And this was how long ago?
10 years.
And so,
I wasn't really close to him.
Right.
He was 11 years older than I.
11?
11 years older than I am.
You guys have the same mother and father?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, same mother and father. But
and your sister is younger than you?
Yeah, 4.5 years younger than me.
Oh, that's interesting. That's quite a spread between the first and second.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Well, my dad had to go away for a little while.
Oh, really?
So
let's talk about Dad. So where did Dad go?
He came to California. He was living in San Rafael, in San Quentin.
San Quentin. What got him into San Quentin?
I think it was armed robbery.
Okay. You were never sure?
I'm pretty sure it was armed
You're pretty
robbery.
sure? Okay. Seems a little...
Some habits die hard. I guess I don't like giving people up.
Well,
Yeah.
This is kind of anonymous. We don't have to put your picture on the...
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah. No, it's just important to sort of give people that are listening an idea of what your family was like, so that people can kind of relate to your backstory and your family of origin. And so your mother, they must have been married a very long time, right? So she married him. Was he always sort of outside like to color outside the lines?
No, I think my dad, from the stories that I've heard, my dad had a very, very difficult childhood. His parents were, I think there was some mental illness. Mm-hmm. I think my dad suffered from some mental illness. A lot of what would be, there's no doubt about it. It's abuse, neglect, abuse.
He was abused.
Yeah.
Physically and neglect.
And all of it, Uh-huh. So I don't know what set him on that path, the criminal path, but he got on it. Mm-hmm. And joined the military lied about his age to join the military to to keep from going to jail when he was younger, and got out and resumed his ways. And but I think once he got out after doing that 7-year bid.
7 years he was in San Quentin.
Yeah, 7.5. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he'd ever done any, serious time aside from that. But anyway, I never really knew him to be a criminal. He wasn't like doing that kind of stuff.
After he got out?
When I was a kid, but violent. Violent and abusive. He didn't, he wasn't a drinker.
He wasn't?
No. Sometimes wonder if it mightn't have helped.
You think maybe it would have calmed him down?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of being facetious, but I really think it's mental illness, Mm-hmm. Really.
Anger and depression and...
A lot of anger and just very unpredictable and not fun growing up.
So when you say that he was violent, he took it out on you and your siblings?
He didn't live with my older brother, that much because he was in prison.
Right.
And my brother was raised by my mom's family. He did come out here. My brother was there for a while, but as soon as my brother was old enough, he, got out of the house. And that's just getting back to my relationship with my brother. I think one of the other reasons that I wasn't close to him is because he was a good kid. He was a straight and narrow. He got good grades. He went to school. He went to college. He was involved in the church. He did all the right things, and I didn't. It was the opposite. I was getting in trouble from, day one. And I don't know what it was in me, because my dad was violent, and I did get beat up. And there were times that I even had the awareness that if I do this, this is not going to be good. And I couldn't not do it. Did it anyway. So there's something, it's dis-ease. I don't know. What do you call it? I don't know if it can be precisely defined.
Right. Yeah. You would knowingly provoke him.
No. Heck no. No way. I did not want to provoke him at all. I just couldn't control myself.
Okay. Impulsive?
I suppose.
Okay.
It's
you
hard.
You had no impulse control.
I mean, at the time, I wasn't even that self-aware, and I don't know how. It wasn't until I got to AA and started using the tools, the inventory tools here, that I ever learned anything about being able to have any kind of self-awareness or an accurate appraisal of what's motivating me. And honestly, Arlena's still sometimes baffled.
Yeah, no, I get that.
No, I didn't. No way did I want to provoke him. I mean, the guy was crazy.
Yeah.
Knocked me out more than once. I mean, no joke. Yeah.
Were you ever hospitalized as a child?
No.
Because they wouldn't take you to the doctor? Was he, the way you said it,
well,
made me...
I never got a broken arm. He never burned me. He didn't, it wasn't something like that.
Right. That required medical...
Yeah, and it was that real creepy, insidious kind of abuse thing where he would never do that in front of my mom, in front of anyone.
He didn't do it in front of your mom?
I'm not saying he wasn't abusive, but he never knocked me out in front of my mom.
Right. And
so afterward, it was, he told me point blank, you tell, and,
there'll be more trouble.
I might have been crazy, but I wasn't stupid. I wasn't telling.
Oh, wow. Was your mother aware?
I'm sure.
To what degree? But maybe not.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I love my mom. In a lot of ways, she's the strongest person, the strongest woman I've ever known. Admire her in so many ways, but I think that she suffers from codependency and a glaring, for whatever reason, just a glaring blind spot in that regard.
To her husband?
And her kids.
And her kids. She couldn't see.
I mean, as a parent, and look, this is not an indictment on my mom.
No.
I'm just saying, I'm not coming from that place. It isn't. I just don't think that she had it. But myself as a parent now, if I even had an inkling that something like that was going on with my kids, there'd be a hubbub.
For sure.
I would not, sit still or couldn't pretend like it wasn't happening. So.
Yeah. Well, it's those experiences that we have as kids that make us aware as adults, right? We know what to look out for, and we know what the long-term effects are.
Yeah, I think maybe I didn't suffer from what she suffers from.
Right.
There's no doubt that my mom loves me with all her heart.
Yeah.
That old saying, if we knew better, we'd do better,
Absolutely.
I just don't think she had it.
Right.
And again, let me make it clear, she came through like a champ in a bunch of other ways.
Sure.
Yeah. But that was my path,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was not, I didn't feel safe. I wasn't. That's why.
That's why you were not.
I wasn't,
Yeah.
it was an accurate feeling. I wasn't safe growing up, and that's not good.
Was that your predominant feeling growing up? Just like not
Fear.
And different from school.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I'm analyzing myself, playing armchair psychologist, but I don't think you have to be really well schooled to realize that look, I'll just talk for me. I think that it really made me feel like there was something wrong with me, even though I knew my dad it was wrong what he was doing, and I hated him, and I was afraid of him. Still somewhere buried deep inside was this thing about maybe he's doing this because something wrong with me. If I was only better or somehow different from how I am. I think it's hard for a kid to really grasp that their parent, because you depend on them for your life.
Absolutely.
They're your sole provider, I think it's even scarier to accept at a gut level that they're fucked up,
Right.
I think it was easier for me to and maybe my self-centeredness, But I think I made that decision, I don't know when, but, so I don't know.
Right. And tell me, so did your younger sister experience all the same things?
So here's the interesting thing too, right? So she didn't, he didn't, maybe because she's a girl, or there was a period of time that that kind of played into it, because he didn't beat my sister up. And I'm glad he didn't.
Right.
But I can't tell you as a kid that there weren't times that it felt unfair and fed into that feeling that maybe it's just me, because he's not doing it to her.
Right.
But I'm glad he didn't.
Right. Okay, so it was, that would make sense that you'd feel different and like there was something wrong. You were just getting the brunt of it.
Yeah.
And do you think that using helped you cope with all those unresolved feelings? Like, how old were you when you started using?
I think I was about 12.
What did you start with?
Alcohol.
The alcohol sandwich, right? The start with alcohol, bunch of stuff in the middle, alcohol at the end.
Yeah, it was alcohol all the way through.
Yeah.
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 But yes, I did.
So you started with drinking.
A bunch of other pills, powders, potions. Preparations, plants. Yeah.
All kinds of fun stuff.
Whatever.
So you were pretty young when you had your first drink of alcohol. Did you get it? Where did you get it from? Your parents?
I had a friend in the neighborhood named Tyler. He was my age. He had an older brother named George. George was 17 or 18 years old. And we were 12, 13. And George thought it'd be funny to get us drunk. And he gave us a fifth of vodka.
Okay.
And I drank 2/3 of it out of the bottle from the gate.
Wow.
And fell in love. I knew, like I said, I grew up with a lot of fear, and it was not good. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, Arlene, I didn't know how screwed up I really felt inside until that vodka hit and it went away. Mm-hmm. And it was, you hear it in AA meetings all the time, everywhere. It was magic for me. Mm-hmm. It really was. And so my first drunk, I don't know if I'd ever sipped off my dad's beer or whatever before, probably, but my first drunk that was it. Mm-hmm. And even my first drunk, I'm sitting in their house and I'm guzzling all this vodka, And I ended up getting sick and throwing up on their screen door trying to get outside. I mean, it was a problem. You know how they say it was fun, and then it was fun with some problems, and then it was a problem from the gate, you know.
All right.
So, but not for me, but for others.
Right. That wasn't a problem for you to puke on someone's screen.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
Well, yeah, it was magical for me. So,
yeah.
I didn't realize it, but I made it's probably more of an unconscious decision to turn my will in life over to the care of alcohol.
Yeah.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'd been looking for, you know, like, where you been all my life?
Right. You finally felt right.
Or at least I didn't feel so wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a pretty common experience. And then, so what kind of repercussion did you have from that first experience?
Well, I mean, I was a kid. I mean, they weren't too happy about me throwing up on their screen, but I mean, it wasn't like, there wasn't a whole lot of repercussion. I mean, what are you going to say? You're the one that gave me a fit. What did you think?
What did you think was going to happen? Yeah.
Did
you tell your parents?
No.
Oh, they didn't?
No. I grew up on the east side of San Jose. It was like,
it's
a hood.
It's a hood.
And you just don't do that. You don't tell.
Right, so you were the white boy in the hood. Were you?
Yeah, I wasn't the only one, though.
Yeah, so that wasn't an issue. You being white.
I mean, I tell you, it was in school more. Mm-hmm. You know, but no, not. I mean, it was there. Mm-hmm. It was there. You needed to be aware, but it was the way it was. It's just how it was. I didn't really think, oh, this is some big deal. It was just how it was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there weren't very many Asian people, but, you know, there were a pretty good melting pot of, you know, Hispanic or Latino and black and white and, you know, we were just there. It wasn't, you know, some of that stuff, but it wasn't that bad. It was more of that happened once I got to junior high school.
Okay.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how I got started. And then it just set me on this path of wanting to get drunk again, like as soon as possible, you know. And so it changed the course of my life because now it just became centered on being able to do that. And when you're 12 years old, you know, when you're a kid, yeah, you have to lie, cheat, sneak out of the house, steal. And so I did. And my buddies did too. So we did.
Yeah. So what kind of stealing would you do? Oh, the face you're making on the podcast.
Yeah. Do I need a lawyer?
Well, okay, maybe that's
for the most part.
Maybe that's not a good question about like what you did, but did you get caught?
I tell you what, Arlene, I was very, very lucky because some of the guys that I was close to running with went to jail, and a couple of them went to prison.
Okay.
So it was mostly petty stuff.
Right. Just so that you could get enough money to...
Yeah, I stole from my parents. I'd steal, you know, I mean, if I could, I just didn't have that moral compass, you know, I mean, or if I did, it was just lost in the need to get drunk.
Right.
You know, and so that group, you know, of people that were of like mind doing that, and, you know, they're smoking weed, and it's just, it's a different, now you're in the life, and there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Right.
Some of it's crime, some, you know, it's a bunch of other drugs, and that's just where I ended up.
Did you ever get arrested?
Yeah, I've been arrested a few times.
Yeah, just like for minor things.
Yep.
Fighting or...
Yep. Yep.
And was it all alcohol related?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. But very, very lucky.
Okay.
Very, very fortunate. I mean, I got away with doing I look back and it's, I don't know how I came out of it as well as I did. I remember when I got 30 days of sobriety, and it really sank in that not just that I had this 30-day chip, but that I hadn't even wanted this thing that had been like superimposed on everything in my life. Like everything was through this filter of being a alcoholic drug addict. Mm-hmm. It was gone. I wasn't thinking about getting high or how I was going to get high or when I could get high. Before I made it to AA, my idea of sobriety was you can't prove I'm drinking. You can't prove it. I'm sober.
Right.
You.
Yeah.
It was gone.
Right.
Right. And so I remember seeking my sponsor out, and I asked him point blank, why me? Why did this happen to me? Because a lot of the guys that I ran with, I mean, I did worse,
than the guys that got caught?
Some died.
Oh. You have friends that died?
Yeah, I've had friends that died. They OD'd. They got killed, and one of them took himself and his girlfriend in a car with 3 other people out.
Drink driving?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. How old?
Probably early 20s. I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. But I mean,
Sad.
done all that and walked away unscathed. I mean, I came to pissed off at this noise that had woken me up, and I was hot. I was going to get in somebody's face about
about waking you up,
trying to moderate my language, but I woke up pissed off to discover that the noise that had woken me up was me grinding on the guardrail on the 280 freeway at about 65 miles an hour. I was on a full-on nod.
Alcohol.
I was just grinding.
Oh.
Just grinding.
Oh my God, you came to?
And
driving?
I came, the sound of the car grinding on the guardrail woke me up, and I mean, sparks flying up in the air.
That's so crazy.
And, in retrospect, classic alcoholic, my first move is to look in the mirror to see who saw me. You know what I mean? I'm not even scared.
You weren't.
I don't know that you can really, I don't know. It wasn't really, I don't think you can, a disease is so trippy. It was like fear didn't impact it.
Wow.
Maybe for a minute. Yeah. Some remorse or fear or guilt or shame for a minute. But my concern was like, did anybody see me? Am I going to get busted?
Right.
And I just drove home and parked all cattywampus in front of the house and woke up in the morning not even remembering until I saw the car, and then that vague, shadowy recollection of, oh, frick.
Yeah.
Oops. Oops. I mean, that's just one.
I know.
That's just one.
Yeah.
And my buddy did that a little, but right here in this area, he was on the 101, no guardrail, and went into oncoming traffic, and 5 people died. So why me?
Right.
Why did I get this thing?
Yeah.
And because, in Dr. Bob's story, he said it's the most wonderful blessing to be relieved of the curse with which I was afflicted. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I was feeling it. Because it was a curse. My life had become a misery. Yeah. And I just didn't understand why somebody like me that had done the things that I had done, that other people had paid.
What do you mean?
With their life, going to prison. Mm-hmm. And I didn't. I pretty much got through it scot-free, really.
Yeah.
In that regard, not on the inside, but
right.
And I'll never forget. He looked at me and he said, I don't know the mind of God, but he obviously has something that he wants you to do. Mm-hmm. I suggest you get busy. And I took it to heart. Yeah. I really did. So.
Well, let's back up a little bit. So that was your sponsor you were referring to when you got your 30-day chip. So what was it that finally, clearly your relationships with your family were not going great. I would imagine, were you in a relationship that...
I was, but you know what, Arlena? I think that I want to go back just a little bit further back, and then we'll move on from my childhood. Sure. Because I think this was a huge thing that happened for me. So even before I found drugs and alcohol, my first out, escape was reading. Oh. I was a gifted kid, right? It was just, it came easy to me. It did. I had a college reading level in elementary school. Whoa. And so, and I could just be in a different world. And so I did. And so it was kind of known around the neighborhood. And a neighbor had given my mom, might have even been through my brother in the church or whatever, but they gave me a bunch of these Bible stories that were written for kids. Oh, and I really liked them. I mean,
some cool stories in there.
Just great literature.
Very violent.
Great literature in the Bible. But this thing happened to me. So I'd been reading them for a while. And one night this just clicked for me. I picked up on this recurrent theme of how God's chosen, the children he loved, that he'd chosen, even though they got themselves into these horrible messes and screwed up, and he performed these miracles and fixed it. And it hits me now. I wasn't getting any miracles, and do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I felt like I probably could have used one. Yeah. I was getting my ass kicked on the regular. It was not good. And so I put two and two together and figured, well, I'm obviously not one of the chosen, one of God's chosen, one of the ones he loves. Oh. And so I decided to not love him right back. Okay. And so that kind of put me on a dark kind of a bent. Yeah. And so I just want to mention that because I had made this decision about God that I later found out was incorrect. Okay. But so anyway, to jump back to where I was telling you about that with my sponsor, and then what was it you said?
Well, I was just curious as to,
Oh, right. So I was in a relationship, but I got to tell you, Arlena, that was the final straw, I think. But it was nothing that happened that day. In
your relationship?
In my life. In my relation. It was all the same.
How old were you?
I was 25.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I got sober when I was 25. I'd been trying all this other... I knew I had a problem. I've been trying all these other ways of controlling and enjoying my drink, Right. The big thing, I did most of my drinking and using in the 70s and 80s. And the thing was back then is, dude, maintain. If you can maintain. Do whatever you want to do, dude, just maintain, right? Right. That's what it started off, somebody saying, dude, maintain. And it wasn't, very long until they were saying, dude, you're blowing it. I just couldn't maintain, I've never been able to maintain. Right. Honestly, never really wanted to.
Right. It wasn't fun if you had to maintain.
No. I used to think that I wanted to drink like a normal person. Have you ever seen a normal person drink? No way. There's no way. I have never wanted to drink like a normal person. I want to drink like an alcoholic. Yeah. That's fun. So, anyway, but yeah, I mean, everything, I remember not long before I got sober thinking, because I've always been a thinker, and right, smart guy. I'm thinking about, and I remember thinking, something's fucked up. I mean, this is impossible. It's against the odds and laws of probability. You mean everything I touch turns to shit? I mean, everything? Everything? Even a broke clock is right twice a day, But I mean, I had that thought, It just, I got to that point. Okay. And so, But I was in a relationship with a young woman that I loved.
Okay.
And as much as I could.
Right.
You know.
Mm-hmm. You were doing the best you could.
I was.
Right.
I was. But it just was, it centered around drinking and using. Mm-hmm. And I came home one day, it was always rocky. It was on again, off again. It was bad. And I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker, but nothing really different had happened that day. I mean, I'd been with women before who had left me or that I'd left them but I came home from work one day and my mom got me a job. Alcoholic, right? I didn't get my own job, so my codependent mom got me a job.
Bless her soul.
Right. I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't. She got me this job as an electrician for a school district. So I'm driving this work truck around from school to school. I played this game with myself that I could go all day without drinking or using. I leave it at home. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, but sometimes not. And this particular day it was not. And so I drove the work truck back to the house on company time and to get loaded. Oh. I developed a bit of a coke habit around that time, which I'm actually very grateful for because I think it played a real big part in me hitting bottom at 25. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I came home and I went in my room and I saw this letter propped up on the pillow of the bed. And I forget, from 10 feet away, I knew what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the first...
it's the Dear John letter.
Not the first Dear Dan letter, I knew exactly what it was. And my default response to something like that would be to get pissed off and justify it and just be angry at them.
Right.
At her. But this day, no. It didn't happen that way. Something inside it's so cliche, they say sick and tired of being sick and tired, but I just really think I was worn out. Mm-hmm. I was just, every day was a flippin' fight just to get through. Mm-hmm. It just really was, and something happened and I started to cry. Aww. And I'd never really been much of a crier. Might have had something to do with my dad telling me, if you cry, I'll give you something to cry. I don't know. Never. I still don't cry a lot. Don't like it. Feels weak. I feel stupid. I feel ugly. I feel, it just does not feel good or right to me. I'm not saying that it's not good or the right thing to do. Sometimes I wish I could do it more easily. This day I had no choice. I just started crying and I couldn't stop.
Okay.
It was like a dam had broken. And so what happened for me, and this is another one of those things that every time I go back and think about this or tell this story, I get this feeling. What happened for me is... was not planning on it, I found myself on my knees and I said, praying to this God that I decided that I hated, and I said the most honest prayer of my life. And it went like this: please, God, help me. With a period. I think there'd been a lot of times when I'd said, please, God, help me get out of this. Please, God, help me, and I'll never, please, God, with a semicolon. But this was, please, God, help me, with a period. I was out of ideas. And just my opinion, Arlena, but I think what happened was the pain I was in was so great that it drove me I was really out of my mind, which... if you read the doctor's opinion, he says the alcoholic's problem centers in his mind. And I think for me, that's what needed to happen. I needed to get out of the box that I was in. And what happened was I had an experience. And, jumped ahead a little bit, but I had been introduced, this was in 1987. In 1983, I got the one and only DUI I've ever gotten, which is a whole story in itself, but I've driven drunk 1,000 times. But this one time, I got this DUI. And part of that deal was I had to go to drug or alcohol diversion classes, and I had to go to some AA meetings, and I wasn't having it. I just wasn't. I went, I complied with the court's orders just to beat the case, so I didn't have to do time. But I wasn't on board with anything. I thought those people in AA were a bunch of weirdos and a bunch of lops. And my first meeting was at the Alana West, 1122 Fair Avenue, and I don't know if they still have them or not, but they used to have these wooden plaques, around the top of the wall that had survived a fire in another building with all the steps on them.
Oh, interesting.
And all these people were getting up, or maybe not all of them, but some of these people were getting up and they were pointing at these steps on the wall, and there was all this gobbledygook they were talking. I remember thinking, dude, what the fuck is a freaking plaque, dude? Calm down. You know what I mean?
Down.
Yeah, I just was not... I wasn't nobody going to hug me. I didn't want to talk to you. If you asked me a question, I'd try to blow you off. If you pinned me to something, I'd lie. I just wasn't.
Not ready.
Not at all. I was not ready, so I proceeded to do it my way and had the most miserable 3 freaking years of my life,
Okay, so from the first time you went to an AA meeting under the
I went to those few meetings.
Yeah.
But...
And then 3 years later?
Yeah, so then fast forward 4 years later, 3.5, 4 years later.
Oh, okay.
1987, so this happens, and I say this prayer, and this feeling, I have this experience, and there was a thought that went through my mind that was not, it seemed like it was how you experience your thoughts? Mm-hmm. Seemed like that, but it wasn't. And the way that I know that it really wasn't is because it was sane. It was, hey, I don't want to, I try to not get too far out there, but as far as I'm concerned, it was God.
Okay.
It was my God. It was the God. And that's not the only reason, because I had this thought that I judged to be sane, but this thought was go back to AA. It wasn't even a thought. It was a statement. That's the other thing. It wasn't like me saying, maybe I'll go back to AA, or me, no, it was like somebody telling me something. Not like yelling at me or angry, but it was actually a very loving kind of a voice, and it said, or thought, and it said, go back to AA, Dan, and you'll be okay. Wow. Go back to AA and you'll be okay. And so with those words or that thought going through my mind, this feeling went through my body. And I don't know, maybe a psychologist or a doctor would say, oh, you were just on drugs, or you were just kicking, or you were just having a breakdown. Okay, maybe, but fuck, it worked for me. Right. Call it what you want. I don't care. I'll take it. This feeling went through my body of, well, here's how I can describe it. It was very similar to when I was 12 and I chugged that vodka. Mm-hmm. I relaxed. I felt peace. Mm-hmm. I felt okay. And all the things that I had judged, that I thought that if there was a God, that the reason that I was not one of his chosen was because of the things that I'd done, and that he had judged me to not be worthy. What I experienced in that moment is that there was no judgment from God. It was my judgment on myself. And it was all, it wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't, hey, I'd like to help you, but remember those rabbits you slaughtered and threw on the steps of St. John Vianney's church on Easter? Because I did that.
Yeah.
Because I was angry at God. There was no weighing of the scales. Let's see. It was none of that. It was instantaneous love and acceptance, and I just knew I was going to be all right. And so I went back to AA. And you guys weren't all lops anymore. And so I started going to Saturday Night Live group when it was in Campbell at the old high school. And I thought I was this tough guy or whatever, you know. I was going to these meetings, and I really, something had happened, and it was sustaining me, you know, for this period of time. The desire to drink and use got lifted from me in that moment, and it's really never returned. It really hasn't.
Wow.
I could count the times that I've thought about drinking on one hand and have fingers left over, and in truth, it wasn't really wanting to drink. It was a bunch of self-pity and drama, really.
Oh, okay.
Really. But I'm going to these meetings and I'm hearing everybody say, you got to get a sponsor, you got to get a, same thing they're saying today. You need to get a sponsor. And I thought I was this tough guy, but I could not walk up to another man and say, I need help. Will you be my sponsor? I couldn't do it. And thank God they called it the chicken shit box,
Really?
which kind of pissed me off but it was my in.
Right.
Because guess what? I was that chicken shit that needed that box. It was a That's not what they called it. It was a nickname that was given to it.
Oh, okay, they called it
the temporary sponsorship box. And it was a box that was on the wall.
Okay.
And it had a little notepad, and you put your name and your number on there, and you fold it up and you put it in there. And some, you know, principal practicing AA member is being of service, pulls your number out of there and gives you a call. And so that's what I did. I could do that. I couldn't walk up to somebody and look them in the eye, but I put my name in. So sure enough, a couple days later, I get a phone call from this guy, and you Dan? Yeah, who's this? And I'll keep his name out of it, or I don't know if I'm very conscious of other people, but he said, I got your name out of the temporary sponsorship box. And so he said, he would meet me at a meeting. It was good, solid AA, great.
Right.
Very blessed for the men that I've had that have worked with me. But so here's another reason why I went back to that, why I wanted to touch on that experience when I was a kid, when I decided that God didn't care about me or love me, or I wasn't one of his chosen. Because what I've really come to believe, Arlena, is that we are his chosen ones, really.
Yeah.
But I can't speak with authority for anyone else, but I can for myself. And so here's what happened. I don't know who this dude was. So I go to meet him, and so you tell me, okay, if there's something going on here. So the guy who I meet, this is not the first time I'd seen this man.
Really?
No, the first time I'd seen this man was about 6 months before, when I was still drinking and using. And there was a concert I don't even know if it was a little club over on Saratoga Avenue. Was it called the Cabaret or something? I don't even know if it's still there.
I'm not sure.
But I don't even remember who it was. It was Robin Trower or somebody. There was some concert.
Okay.
Right? And so I just decided I wanted to go to this concert. So I went to the concert, but I showed up late and I showed up loaded, like I did to everything. It was normal for me, but it was packed. And there were no seats, and it was kind of a dinner kind of club if you've never been there, but they have booths and stuff. And so, when the band started playing, I was standing right in front of this booth with a bunch of people, and I was blocking their view. They got there early.
Right.
Yeah, there's seats, and they're, right? And I'm standing right in front of them. And this guy says, hey, yo, dude, you're blocking our view. Move out of the way. And I flipped him off and said, F you. I'm moving. Move me. Right? And so, because that's how I was.
Right.
And so a couple minutes later, some 500-pound Samoan bouncer comes over and he goes,
you.
Well, again, I'm drunk, but I'm not stupid. So, he goes, hey, man, move, right? And so I moved. But He wasn't standing there babysitting me. As soon as he walked off, I walked right back over, making eye contact with this dude, flipped him off. I'm smoking weed in the club. I'm just, you right? I'm doing it. Doing me. You do me. I'm doing, right? I'm doing me. And it was ugly.
Yeah.
And I looked him right in the eyes and flipped him off and stood right in front of their table. Well, lo and behold, when I go to meet this dude, that was a dude.
Oh my God. What?
That was the guy that pulled my
of the
slip.
Hundreds?
That was a whole group of sober people
okay.
that went to see that concert together. Mm-hmm. So something was going on.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Something was going on. And I felt it. And it was a beautiful thing, too, because there was no way I was going to be able to present myself as anything other than what I really was. He saw me. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? Try to front and tell him I wasn't really that bad. I'm not. Oh, no, I didn't even try to go there. But, he saw me. And I'm very blessed. He was never unkind. As a matter of fact, I've never had a sponsor talk down to me. I hear people in meetings, they almost brag about it like it was some great thing. They say, my sponsor told me to shut up and you don't know shit and don't say anything until somebody tells. Yeah, I've never had a sponsor speak to me that way. And maybe some people do. I don't know. I didn't. I came in to get away from that.
Yeah.
I think if I had a sponsor that talked to me that way, it might have been a problem. Because I didn't have a very well-rounded toolkit.
Right. Social skills?
No, anger, rage. Mm-hmm. Rage, violence. So, and I was in that place, man. I was still sustained by that experience that I had. Mm-hmm. And something was different. And, he didn't waste any time with me. He was very, very direct. He would only meet me at meetings. He told me what was expected of me. And for once in my life, I didn't argue. I didn't think about doing anything other than what this guy asked me to do. What? Amazing. Because I would do the opposite. It was, I wouldn't do telling me shit, Mm-hmm. So, and I just never looked back. I got into the deal, and he took me to Crestwood Manor on an H&I gig.
What's Crestwood?
It's a lockdown mental institution. I think it's still over there.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. Stuff where the legit crazy
people are.
Oh, boy.
Lockdown. Yeah.
Okay.
And which was a trip. Yes. But when we were leaving, man, I was like, I had a few hot months, Mm-hmm. And we were leaving, the secretary that he was he knew my sponsor, and he was telling him how hard it was to get people. He said, man, I've been doing this forever because nobody wants to take this commitment. And my sponsor gave me that look like, speak up, fool. Like he's listening to dude. And then he just gives me that pointed stare. And the words just came out. I'll do it. And I ended up doing that meeting in Crestwood Manor for like 2.5 years.
Wow.
I mean, it just.
You got right into service.
Oh
right
boy.
In the very beginning.
I mean, what really happened. One of my favorite lines in the whole big book is 3 words long. It's on page 63, and it says, "We were reborn." And I didn't go to a church, and there was no water involved. Mm-hmm. But something happened to me. The person that I used to be, I was a different person now. I was a different person after I said that prayer that day, really. And I'm not saying like I became great or perfect or holy or none of that. I'm just saying that I did not react the way that I used to. I didn't think the way that I used to all the time. Something was different in me. And so the Saturday Night Live group was an awesome group to be involved with at that time. If you were young, there were a lot of younger people. It was a vital group. It was, it wasn't boring. It wasn't, there was shit happening.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Lots of fun.
It was a sufficient substitute. It was, so anyway, I just got into the deal. And I was carrying alcoholics to the message before I had a message to carry to the alcoholic. I was giving people rides, and one thing led to another. And, like my friend Mike T says, somewhere between step 1 and step 12, I fell in love with this deal. And, and once that happens for somebody, and that's what I really try to do for a man that I'm working with, because then if that can be accomplished, then I'm not really needed anymore. Maybe occasionally help somebody get over the hump, but it's that old Zen AA saying, where the newcomer asks the old timer, how long do I got to go to these meetings? And he says, oh, just until you want to. And when you fall in love with something and you want to go, it just changed the whole thing. So, I got very, very involved, did a bunch of H&I work, and kind of hesitant to... I got blessed. It's not about all the stuff I did. It's the stuff I got to do, that I got to be a part of.
You also had to participate. You had to do your part.
I did.
It's
Absolutely.
The co-creating. Right?
It is.
Yeah.
But for me, Arlena, it's like, when I drove over here from my hotel, I was going about, I don't know, at some points I was going like 65 miles an hour. I did my part. Like, I got in the car and turned the ignition key and like turned a wheel and pressed on a pedal. But all that 65 mile an hour shit, that wasn't me. Right? I do have to play my part.
Yeah.
But the heavy lifting, the real stuff, I can't take credit for that.
Because if we could have done it on our own, we would have. Right?
What I've come to believe is, and again, I won't speak for anyone else. I don't think I'm fundamentally different, but I just want to speak for myself. I was not created or designed to operate independently from God. Right. I'm not. I'm not. And sometimes I still try.
Of course. That's part of the human condition, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm not. It's like, to me, it's a lot like, like nowadays everybody has GPS either in your car or on your phone, and it's very much like Google Maps or something, like if I need to go somewhere, I put it in there and it tells me this most direct, fastest route, and I don't have to listen to it. Right. I can be distracted. It happens, you know, and whatever, and miss my turn. And you know what? Google Maps doesn't yell at me. You know what it does? It says rerouting. Yeah. And then it just proceeds to give me the best, most direct, easiest directions to get there from where I am now. And that's how my relationship with God is. Like I've flown it right into the mountain, Arlena. Sure. I mean, I have a few times, but that's life and that's sobriety. And I've learned a lot from that stuff too, but it's there. And I'm foolish if I don't take advantage of what's there for me. It's never steered me wrong. Right, right.
And, that sort of is a good segue to talk a little bit about what we were discussing earlier about the hazards of long-term sobriety. So we do have this sense after, long-term, you begin to trust that, internal GPS, as you put it. But you and I have both seen people with long-term sobriety who... it's easy to kind of get in a groove and stay there. And then the other character defects that you're not really working on tend to grow a little bit, let's say. So, some of the long timers will fall into kind of one of two camps, right? The people who are really centered and in balance and humble and, of course not perfect, but, they maintain. Right? Yeah. And then you have the other camp of long-timers who kind of seem to have it together, but then have like this whole other set of character defects that seem to be kind of glaring to everybody else but them.
Yeah.
So I was just curious as to maybe some of your thoughts around those two different perspectives and maybe some of the hazards that you see of long-term sobriety that don't really get addressed too much, like at meeting level.
I like the way, Bill in the 12 and 12, he describes those two different versions, and he calls one, the first one, the centered one. He refers to them as elder statesmen, and the others are the bleeding deacons.
Okay.
And he says sometimes if the bleeding deacons don't get it together, they hemorrhage so badly that they drink,
Yeah. Which we have both seen.
It's one of those, and I have.
Yeah.
I have. It's one of the things about, I guess it's a society of people, but it certainly exists in AA. And I take pains to be aware of it and not to buy into it. But this whole idea that your status is somehow attached to your sobriety, the length of
How much time
if you have more years than this person, then your status is higher than this person, unless of course you've relapsed. And now, and there's this and it's
higher.
And again, for me, it's false. Let me just use a nice word for it. And
what's the not nice word for it?
Bullshit.
Okay.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's hazardous to your health if you're an alcoholic.
And you buy into it.
If you buy into your own bullshit. I really think.
Because then you begin to think that you know something. Or...
It's easy to fall into, Arlena. And you do. You think you that's right. You begin to think that it's you.
Well, and, the book talks about, self-reliance fails us. And I think that...
And pride and ego. And new people come in, and I certainly didn't feel, hey, I didn't even think I could talk to somebody with 5 years when I was new. They were like a higher order of being. They weren't saying that. I felt that way.
Right.
And so you get treated that way, and it's, man, I think I'll keep it to me. If I'm not careful, I can find myself starting to, buy into that bullshit.
How long have you been sober now?
Well, 2 weeks. It'll be 30 years, God willing.
30 years.
Yeah.
In a couple weeks.
Yeah, March 12th will be
wow.
30.
Dude, that's a big deal.
But it's really just a day at a time, though.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Arlena, there have been times in the past 30 years you wouldn't have wanted my sobriety.
But that's normal.
I'm not saying it isn't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
that
that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
So what? I had 25 years. I was effed up.
Yeah.
My behavior was out of pocket. I was not practicing, and like O'Connor used to say, here's the thing that I think, and look, I'm not saying that there's not, that there's no value in time, because there is, because for a couple of reasons. Because you have sober living experience, and because, like O'Connor used to say, with time, he says, I don't swing out as far or stay out as long. I tend to not. Right. I really don't make the same kind of disastrous. I haven't had handcuffs on. The last time I had handcuffs on, I had 9 months soberness because I turned myself in for amends.
Part of your 9
That's it. I have not had, but I don't think it's good for new people to feel less than, and it certainly does not sit well with me for me to start to believe that my thoughts, my views, my opinions should carry more weight because I have X amount of time. Because they shouldn't. Everybody's opinion is valid. Everybody has the right to be wrong, even. I certainly have.
Absolutely. And how do you address, here's something that I hear, and I'm sure you do too, is when somebody's new and they come in and clearly they need help, but you get this, I don't want to bother you. How do you transfer that information of, we actually need you. We need to be able to give back what was so freely given to us in order to maintain our sobriety?
Yeah, that. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not every person's different. I don't have a cookie cutter approach, you know. Everybody's different, but it's the truth. And I even tell them, dude, I get it. You don't feel like it probably sounds like some corny BS, but I need to do this too.
Yeah.
You know, I'm getting something out of this too.
Yeah.
You know,
somebody that when I was early on, some guy was saying, told me that he thought he asked me, how long are you going to go to those classes?
Right.
And
I've heard that.
And then he asked me, then he said, you know, I was breaking up with him. So he was telling me that, he thought that those people were brainwashing me. And I thought that was hilarious because I was like, you know what? If that is the case, I totally need it. I am down for the brainwashing because my way is not working. But it's just interesting.
But if you're not there, you're not there. You're not going to see it that way.
Right. Yeah.
And just to backtrack about the perils of having some time.
Right.
And I don't know that there's any, you know, decade or period that I think these things just pop up once you start to get this idea about yourself. That's the hazard. It could happen when you have 3 years or 30 or anywhere in between, you know, but I've suffered from this one, from having some circumstances, something going on in my life, some difficulties, struggling, and feeling like I should not be, I don't want to tell anybody because you shouldn't be feeling like this with 15 years.
Right. Again,
bullshit. You know, it really just comes down to honesty. Really. We're all human beings. You can make a mistake at any time, you know. Getting too in love with an image of yourself is not good for me. Keep trying to bring it to me, and when I see it done, and unfortunately I see it quite a bit, like a lot of preaching and a lot of talking down to, a lot of telling rather than a lot of just showing, you know, honest connection with somebody, you know, relating. But I see a lot of this like spiritual hilltopping stuff, and it just does not, I don't feel power in that. There's force in it, but not the real power, not that power that happened to me. Right. I was very well versed in force before I got here.
Right. So
I knew all about force. I knew all about people exerting force over me and me doing it to others.
Right.
That never got it done for me. It just didn't. But that real, and you know, I'm sure you've experienced it and more than once. When you feel that thing move through you, wow. I mean, that's the thing. And you can actually see it in the other person, their response. It's power. It's not of me, but if I'm doing it the way that I think I'm supposed to be doing it, it feels the right way to do it, and that I've been taught, it can move through me, and that's what's supposed to happen. I'm not preaching. I'm not here to judge anybody. I have no idea why I've never relapsed or why someone else did, and for me to sit there and pick it apart. I mean, obviously, if they've balked or they haven't, yeah, we'll talk about it. You know, what maybe you haven't done or you're sure. But, man, we're all just here trying to get through, you know?
Doing the best we can.
I remember, man, I had maybe a couple of years, and back in the day, man, live, that place used to get some really, really, really good speakers. I don't remember this woman's name, but she spoke at this meeting, and she said, we're not here to see through each other. We're here to see each other through. And it might sound corny, but it hit me at that time, and it stuck with me, and that's really what it's about. I'm not here to beat anybody up. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to make you feel like you're stupid or you're a fuck up. You know all about that if you're here. Mm-hmm. How about something different?
Right.
Because there is something different, and that's where the magic is. That's where for me. Mm-hmm. So, anyway.
Yeah, and I think when you first experience that, being a channel or a vessel for that energy to flow through, that is a life-changing experience, right? And I think that becomes the sufficient substitute. It's the message with depth and weight, right? And I don't know about you, but I find that, I got sober here in this area. And for me, I did move once for a short period of time. And
I remember.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. We didn't stay there long because I don't know if it...
Well, neither did most of the other people who moved at that time with you, but yes.
Right. It was during the dot-com boom. And yeah, the area was too crowded and we got a little money and we're like, let's leave.
Yeah, well.
Let's leave the area that has been so good to us. But, I kind of wanted to segue into that other topic we were going to discuss about what it's like to move. For me, it was, it just seemed like there was no place like home. Right?
Yeah.
They did it different, and I had a difficult time connecting.
Yep.
And, you moved 15 years ago and you have been able to establish new relationships. And, it takes, I remember when I first moved, this girl was telling me, it takes 10 years to get a relationship of 10 years. You know what I mean? It's like there is benefit to having these long-term friendships. So can you just sort of talk a little bit about what it was like why did you move, and then what it's been like since you had to establish a new community? Well,
I'll just tell you, for me, Arlena, it has been 15 years. Mm-hmm. Still no place like home.
Oh.
It just isn't. Yeah. You know why? Because it's not. It's a different place.
Yeah.
This is different people. Yeah. And it was very difficult for me. I did not move under good circumstances. I had never planned. Never wanted to move from this area. Mm-hmm. I loved it here. My AA experience was charmed. Mm. It just was from day one. And it still is. But I mean, I had a host of friends, all that corny shit that you read in the book, I had it. Mm-hmm. I had a home. I had a thriving business. I could hardly go somewhere without running into someone, not that I not just knew, but knew and loved. Mm-hmm. I had it wired here. Mm-hmm. I moved because I was married, and the woman that I was married to, we became estranged and decided to divorce, and I had 2 young children, and she was from Southern California, mm-hmm. and she decided that she was going to move back to Southern California with my kids. And it was a very, very painful experience. I didn't know what the frick to do. The only thing that brought me any sense of peace or felt in the least way right to me in all of that was that I needed to be near my kids. And so I made that decision to close my business and sell my house and move away from all of my friends and my sponsor and start over. And very, very difficult. And for a long time, I judged it, and it was like, I finally had to make peace with it. It was like, when is it going to be, when am I going to have it here like I had it there? And I finally had to make peace with the truth that it's never going to be here like it was there. And I was bummed about that for a while. But practicing the principles, eventually you got to turn it around. And for me, turning it around is instead of bitching about the fact that I'm not going to have it charmed here like I had it charmed there. How about be grateful that you had it charmed for 15 years? Yeah. How about that? Mm-hmm. And so it's not the same there as it is here. I don't have as many friends there as I do here. My life is different there than it has been here. For most of that time, I was single. I was younger. I ran around with a pack of sober dogs, and and it was great. That's not what I should be doing now. Yeah. I'm not supposed to have that kind of. It's different, but AA is there, and being of service is still there, and I do have men that I work with and friends, and it's good, and I'm sober. It's okay. Right. But I ought not compare that to this, because that isn't this. Mm-hmm. They're different. And I'll be honest with you, 15 years later, there's things about the meetings in Southern California, and I'm not going to, enumerate on what they are, because it doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm like,
Can you give me I think specifics are kind of important. There's just some...
Yeah, I just don't... Okay, I mean, I can be specific, but as long as it's clear that this is just all in my head, it's my judgment, yes. Right? Yes. It's my perception, because if they came here after 15 years, they'd probably think the way we ran meetings up here is fucked up.
And that's true. I have a friend who's from Southern California, and he's been here 7 years, and he's like just now feeling like
that's right. I mean, because
we don't do it.
Nobody's tuna casserole is as good as mom's tuna casserole. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean,
I hear that we don't do birthdays right here. Like everybody in Southern California gets a cake or something.
And to me, just me. That's way too self-aggrandizing for my comfort. I just wasn't raised that way. If you got up with 15 people, an entourage of people, and spoke endlessly about how fucking great you are, some old timer would pull you aside after the meeting and tell you some shit about yourself that would have you, writing.
You would have a writing assignment at the end.
You'd have a resentment, or not. But you know what I mean?
Are you saying that that's a common occurrence?
Yeah.
Okay.
People like to really
talk about how great they are.
See, that's terrible. That's going to sound.
But if that's what's your experience, that's okay, because I feel like.
And here's the thing. Again, it's me, because they fucking love it.
Yeah.
They love it, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? And they're sober and wonderful people. I'm not saying that the people that are taking cakes are assholes, or their sobriety sucks, or no.
Yeah. It's just not something you would do.
But just to me, I wasn't raised that way in AA. It's just too much about... I mean, right? I could not even imagine, going to 400 West Campbell, with Holt and Easthouse and and on my birthday walking up there with 9 guys.
You mean like physically 9 people get up?
It's freaking crazy to me.
So 9 people will stand up and all walk to the front of the room.
And give them their cake, and you hug them all. It's a freaking big old production.
And so is it... So the props go to the person with the most people that walk up with them, or is it?
Well, it's unspoken.
Who's walking?
But obviously, there must be some kind of esteem or status attached to having a whole ginormous clique.
So your clique goes up with you to give you your cake, and you receive your cake. Is that how it goes down?
It's a trip.
I've never seen it. Now I want to go.
Yeah, go. And maybe you love it. You know what I mean? Again, this is just me. And it's because I wasn't raised that way, maybe. But it just seems like...
Well, we're trying to keep our pride in
too much about you.
Yeah.
Not enough about God and us,
Right. So who is it?
Not everybody, not always, but it's more often than not.
Yeah, I'm just curious about who goes with you. Is it your sponsees that you bring up with you to the front of the room, or? It's just whoever you...
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when you show up to the party and, whoever has a bag of dope gets to pick who goes in the bedroom with them.
Yeah.
You and, not
you.
You, it just feels weird to me.
Is it decided ahead of time?
And look, I was sober
curious.
15 years. I don't know how everybody decides it how they decide it.
Okay.
I've never done it that way. I take cakes because that's what you do there. You take cakes.
Okay.
Do
people follow you up there?
Well, but I ask one or two people.
Okay.
Right? And I usually would try to ask a new guy I'm working with and my sponsor out of respect.
Okay.
Right? So like 2 people.
Okay.
I want someone new that I'm working with to fall in love with AA. Mm-hmm. And I want to honor my sponsor for the time that he's spent with me.
Sure.
So... It's really not you know what I mean? The whole thing is kind of uncomfortable for me.
Too much attention.
But I'm just not used to it. Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
I certainly I hardly talk in meetings anymore.
Why? Do you volunteer? Is it you volunteer?
Well, I'll tell you. Hey, it might be a good segue here. I'll tell you what. That's part of it because down in Southern California, at least where I go in Southern California, it's not all the same, but I've been to in different, it's not, I've been to meetings other than just in the city that I live in. But you volunteer.
Oh, okay. You raise your hand to
And
speak.
so it's not really like that here.
No, you get called on here.
And there's a whole political, let's be real. I've been to 15 years worth of meetings here too. There can be a whole political, who gets picked and who doesn't get picked drama around that shit too.
Right.
Just like the one with the dope, you and no, not you, the same. Okay. Yeah. People are people, but, anyway.
Yeah. No, if you have a lot of sobriety, so the way we do it here, just for people listening, is that there's the secretary, and the secretary will ask someone to share their story, their experience, strength, and hope. And then the person who shares their story, they call on others. And sometimes they ask for a volunteer or burning desire. Does that happen? Does it go down like that in Southern California?
Sometimes so when there's a burning desire is when there's a meeting format. I'm just tripping on how this is going to come across like I'm all judgy on Southern California meetings. Meanwhile, I live there. I mean, that's another thing. When I was going through all that judgment and internal and this ain't right and it's not like it was there, this thought real strong in my head was, dude, you're here. You better get in where you fit in, okay? Because they'll be fine without you.
Right.
Well, you going to be okay without them?
Right.
Uh-oh. So, all my little judgy whatever aside, I'm putting my butt in that seat at the meeting, okay?
Yeah.
Right. So.
And I hear that. I have a friend who actually went to high
grateful
school
for it.
And grateful for it, yeah. I have a friend who I went to high school with here who moved away to Maryland, and that's where he got sober. And when he came here, I heard for many years about how he couldn't stand the clapping. Like, we clap here for everything.
Exactly.
But he had to get in where he fit in. It's like he needed to be sober, so he was willing to go to any length and get with the culture of the area. Like, every meeting sort of has its unspoken rules.
That's right.
Or spoken.
And they get to.
Yeah.
Each group is autonomous.
Yeah. And so there is that adjustment period, but I think what I really like about this area is that there's so many different kinds of meetings, and there's so many transplants from other areas that meetings tend to specialize. I think there's somewhere around 800 meetings here every week. So whether there's one called No BS, the No Bull meeting, where there's no chairperson, there's no clapping, there's like a quiet little meditation, and then everybody reads, and then they end the meeting with a little meditation, and that's it. And so I love
Good for them.
No clapping. So that was a place that my friend found where he could fit in. So it can be done many, many, many ways.
Yeah, and I think the truth of it is that I'm supposed to fit in there.
Yeah.
Because I'm there.
Well, and you found a way to connect. And I recently saw this TED Talk where this guy, the topic of his TED Talk was everything you know about addicts is wrong. And the theme of his talk was about people who are drug addicts and alcoholics are craving connection. And what we do to them is we punish them and we isolate them and we create more separation. Which sort of...
Oh, you mean the criminal justice system?
The criminal justice system. But it happens within families, too. But I don't know what family... Like, he was a family member of somebody who was in, active addiction. And they just don't know what to do.
That's right.
And so we know, like, codependents are unable to set a boundary and create separation, right? Which I thought was so interesting because at the end of his talk... He stated that the cure, so to speak, I'm giving air quotes on a podcast, but the cure is connection. And I feel like when we move to a different place, like all the pomp and circumstance may be different, but at the end of the day, we find a way to connect at that heart level. Don't you think?
I absolutely think that.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's better now than it's ever been. Not knowing what to do with alcoholics that's from the first alcoholic. The people around him or her were going, what the fuck are we going to do with you?
People just didn't
They
know
used
what
to burn us at the stake.
Yeah.
They used to think we were possessed. Mm-hmm. They used to lock us up in mental institutions.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, I think that it is about connection. But for me, it is about connecting with other people. But the divine in other people, what it really boils down to for me, what I realized I was always looking for was that connection with God. It was and I go back to this thing, and that's this whole animosity that I had towards God. It was very disconcerting for me the day that I had this realization that all that time I hated God, I was thinking about him. He was on God was on my mind then as much, if not more than now. It's a part of me. It always has been a part of me. When Bill and Carl Jung were corresponding toward the end of Bill's life, they clicked to this thing. It's not a mistake that they call alcohol grain spirits. Mm-hmm. And in my own experience, just like I said, that feeling when I had that spiritual experience. I'm one of those guys that had a spiritual experience, but before I even worked a step. Mm-hmm. But the feeling that went through my body, the closest thing to it was when I guzzled all that, when I would drink. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really think. Again, I just speak for myself with authority, but I suspect for all of us really is that what we really, really crave is something beyond this material, a connection with the divine, with God. And it's not just a connection with people, because if the people are assholes, that's not enough. Mm-hmm. That's not enough. Some of the loneliest times in my life was in a group of people.
Yeah, that you didn't connect with. Felt separated.
Right.
Unable to reach them.
But what is that connection? It's not about physicality. It's not about proximity. It's not about sex. It's not. Tried it. Been there, done that. Mm-hmm. It's not.
It's about that heart connection.
That's right. But it's not just the beating muscle. What is that heart? That heart is the spiritual heart of AA. It's that thing. And I don't want to be preachy. I'm hesitant to really try to define it because it can't be, number one. And the second that you try to, then
people look for a loophole.
Well, not that they look for a loophole. I mean, it's the same for me. You words are polarizing. Mm-hmm. They evoke emotion. They're charged words. So, I try to keep it in generality. Whatever it is that you want to call it love, call it life, but something more than just the punch me in, punch me out every day Monday, or how much money I make, or the car I drive, or the whatever. Mm-hmm. That's not enough.
Right.
It's connecting, and that's the thing about people in AA, is connecting with them on a level that doesn't really have anything. Those might be the circumstances that bring you together or somehow influence, but what the real deal isn't about any of that. This is just not for me. Mm-hmm. It just hasn't been that way for me. So I believe that what I was looking for was that connection with God, because that's what makes me feel safe and protected, like I can relax, like I'm good enough, like I have value, because I do.
Yeah.
Because I do, and I get to express that in AA. That's the beauty of AA. You know, I'm uniquely qualified. That's a phrase I use in the book. You know, but anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting when you said the words are polarizing. They can have. It's tough to try to choose your words too carefully, because words can be polarizing, but they also can be so unifying, right? It's the words that I hear that tell me that you are one of my own. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like when I hear you say certain things, like I'll never forget. I was early in sobriety, and you talked earlier about people not talking down to you or being condescending. Condescending is like a hot button for me. I can't hear anything when someone's being. And I remember you saying, it was the first time I had heard it, that if you're going to talk down to me like I'm a piece of shit, I can't hear anything that you say. But when it's just one alcoholic talking to another, then it's like all of a sudden I get that you get me. Right. And so when it's like we use the same language, right? It's the language that we use. It's like we do talk about God, and I do like that we redefine God and allow people to define God for themselves. And it doesn't really matter at the end of the day how they define it, because what ends up happening, right, is that we're able to have a conversation, and because you're focused on really what the essence of God is of love and service and acceptance and all that stuff, that sort of melts all the walls so that we can connect. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
but even within AA, you know, we're kind of cautioned, just because
we are,
those words can really, you know, even Bill said, you know, the idea, the word God still aroused a certain antipathy in me.
Yeah.
You know, so especially with stuff like that, if you and I were talking, I know you.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, broadcasting to who knows who, I just, you know, I don't want to, I want it to be as open as possible, because that's what it really is.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, your concepts, I have no argument with anyone about what they believe or what their practices are. Why would I?
Yeah.
That's for you, you know, and I don't get involved with anyone trying. I just don't get caught up in anyone trying to do that for me either. But I see it happen in meetings.
Right.
I see it happen in meetings when someone starts talking about Jesus, and somebody, for whatever reason,
reacts
negatively, and it's a turnoff for them.
Yeah.
You know?
But don't you feel like it's, I think it's important to have these discussions. And I think that if someone starts talking about God or Jesus, that what ends up happening is that it makes you ask the questions. It makes you ask, do I believe this? What does this mean? What does this mean to me? It like starts bringing up these questions. So even if you don't agree, well, maybe, but what if you are lucky, let's say? And
I mean, I see your point. It feels like you're trying to say, and I maybe agree, like being too afraid of it or shying away from it too much might not be a good thing either, right?
Yeah, I just feel like either way is okay. I think being general is
well, for
okay.
one thing, it's not an AA meeting we're in, and sometimes I forget that, even doing this, because we're talking about my experience in sobriety, which is in AA.
Yeah.
And this isn't an AA meeting.
You also have a lot of recovery and healing, and you've learned a lot outside, like Course in Miracles, or just being in groups of people that are like-minded and having these open discussions.
Yeah.
Where we can go through our stuff in a safe place. I think it's so important that, like, you and I especially have found groups of people where you could just be like, this is what I think. I'm uncomfortable with this word, or, you know what I mean? It's like you get uncomfortable, and then we get to discuss it in like a respectful way. And I think it's interesting that at meetings, people, we trigger, that's such a thing now. People are like, oh, it triggers me. And I think that's okay to be triggered because...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because it has to... Marianne Williamson used to talk about, in order to detox, the LSD has to come up so that it can come out, It's like detoxing. And so it's like we have all these ideas that may or may not be serving us. And it's only when we're triggered that we get to have a conversation where all this stuff comes up. So I think even in meetings, people get pissed off and they go and they talk to their other people. That guy was an asshole and he was talking about, it's what is the deal with that? And then they, even though they are polarized by the words, what we end up doing is it brings us tighter to the people who we identify with, don't you think?
I think it can.
It can.
I think it can.
Yeah. I know some people...
And it's not really in my control. I just try to be mindful when I talk about spiritual matters, to try to keep it in general terms.
Yeah, which I appreciate.
But anybody, whatever it is that any human being chooses, however they choose to define that... is limited in some way. So, the way that mine is limited is no better or worse than the way yours is limited. So,
right, isn't that funny?
If the words that I'm using or the terms that I'm using are offensive to you, then kick them to the curb.
Yeah. Take what you like and leave the rest.
Right? I mean, I'm not trying to push anything on anyone.
No, of course not.
And I've just happened to notice that you can't anyway.
Right.
You can try, but I mean, that's one of the things that after 30 years, it keeps me going to meetings is, just for the amusement of seeing one alcoholic try to control another.
Right. Listen, I can't even control myself. I'm not even going to try to control anybody else. No, and actually that's a good segue into maybe we can wrap up with the sort of typical way I wrap up with is the name of the podcast is ODAT Chat. And ODAT stands for One Day at a Time. And at 30 years, do you have, I like to ask, what do you do to stay sober? And really what I'm asking is, do you have a weekly routine or a daily practice?
Yeah,
sure. A morning or evening practice that helps you stay sober?
Sure, I do. But I got to tell you, for me, Arlena, is one of the things that I quit doing actually several years ago is beating myself up. I quit beating myself up if I forgot to pray this morning or if I, got busy and didn't meditate or check it out. If I haven't, because I am a student of A Course in Miracles. So if I didn't do my workbook lesson today or for 5 days, I refuse to beat myself up for it anymore. I just, you know what?
Yeah.
I'll get back to it. And I do.
Right.
I do try to have a routine.
Okay.
I mean, most people do. But some kind of daily routine. And I do incorporate, I get up early in the morning, earlier than I need to give myself some time. O'Connor used to say, meet God in the morning, at the best part of the day, first thing in the morning before any of the pressures or demands or, and so I still like to do that. I like to get up early and read and pray and, have my coffee and just some quiet time. And, I'm a spot check inventory guy. I'm not one for the written, never have been one for written 10 steps every night. I'm not saying that it's not great. Might even benefit me. I'm just saying I've never been one for that. If I get upset about something, I've learned to pause when agitated and ask and wait. And I'm open to just about anything. And like we were saying earlier, some of it fits for me and some of it doesn't. And if it doesn't fit, I don't judge it unworthy. I just say that it's not for me right now. Some of the things that read at a particular point that weren't for me at that time later were for me. So, but I go to meetings still. I work with guys still.
How many meetings do you go to a week? Does it vary?
It varies, but probably on average 3.
3 meetings?
Yeah.
Is it the same ones every week?
It was, but I've lately started to change it up. So I'm kind of checking out some different meetings, which is good for me too.
Sure.
For me, because, hey man, I'm just keeping it real. I start going to the same meeting all the time for months and months and months, and I find myself into this guy again.
Right, yeah.
Oh, not her. Or,
Yeah.
come on, dude. That, and that's not good for me. Why be there if I'm going to be in that spot? So, yeah. Where I live, there's 1,800 meetings a week, So, if I want to drive into the valley, I mean, within 20 miles of me, there's it's crazy, So there's tons and tons and tons of meetings there. So.
Wow. So you switch it up every once in a while. That seems healthy.
Yeah.
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 You learn something from the different group, and then...
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. So just check out some different meetings and find one that I kind of like the vibe of, and then I'll maybe start making that a regular meeting for a while. And then when I start to feel like, heard that dude 33 times or 333 times, and because that's how it is in meetings, and that's how it was when I talked in meetings. You especially here, that was a huge difference. Here, like you said, the chairperson picks people to talk.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I got picked to talk a lot.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't real healthy for me either.
Right. You couldn't go to a meeting and just listen. You always had to talk.
And I'm thinking about when
what you're gonna say.
when I get called on, this is my freaking... whatever, and so I had to school myself with that by just telling myself, you know what, if you get called on, dude, you're going to pass.
Okay.
And so I could just turn all that off.
Okay.
But, it's like that anywhere. There are certain people that talk.
Yeah.
Like frequently.
Yeah.
I used to be one of them. I'm not judging them.
Yeah.
But after a few months, maybe you want to hear someone new. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
That's kind of where it's at right now.
Because there's a lot of people with a lot. I really believe that everybody has a gift to share. And if you've shared the same gift 15, 30, 300 times, maybe you need a new gift.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I'll never forget, I went to a meeting in Santa Clara when I was relatively new. And after the meeting, this... I guess old timer. He asked me, because he's taking a shine to me. He was doing the AA deal, and he was talking to me after the meeting, and he said, so what'd you think about the meeting, or how'd you like the meeting? I said, nah, I didn't really like it that much. He said, how come? He said, I didn't really get anything out of the speaker. And he said, well, did it ever occur to you that his message wasn't for you? And But here's the thing that really rocked me is the answer to that question is no. It had never occurred to me that his message might be for someone other than me.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah. Well, listen, I go to meetings because I need a message. So
because I've noticed that, I'll be in there and that's kind of what I'm talking about. So it's me, because somebody will be talking, Joe will be sharing again, like he does at every meeting, and pretty much the same thing. Yeah. And I'm like, well, come on, frick, dude. Yeah. But I look around and there's 19 people going, they're vibing off it. Yeah, right?
Feeling it.
So, hey, man, his message isn't for me.
Right.
So maybe go somewhere else.
Go somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I get it. That's awesome. Listen, I feel like I've held you hostage for almost 2 hours.
Holy moly.
I know. And I'm so glad that you were in town.
Gives you a lot of stuff to edit, a lot of room.
Yeah, no, I don't edit. too complicated.
Jeez.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to have you here in person. We could have done this over the phone, but it's totally different when you're face to face with someone. So I just want to thank you for taking
Arlena.
the time out.
Well, I love you guys. I mean, just being able to see you.
Yeah, which is awesome. And I just adore you. And you have so much wisdom. And maybe that makes you feel uncomfortable, but I don't give a shit. I'm going to tell you, I think you're fabulous, which is why I asked you to be on the podcast. So, yeah, I hope you own that. And just know that I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime, because I know we have lots of other things that we can talk about.
Yeah, maybe not so much about how SoCal's doing their meetings wrong.
Whatever, fuck it. If they have a resentment, they can talk to their sponsor.
Exactly.
Well, listen, thank you so much.
Thank you,
have a great
Arlena.
day. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to ODAT Chat. Please visit odatchat.com for more episodes, to leave feedback, or suggest topics and guests. Until next time.